My name is William Scott, and for my final project, I'll be talking about how the smartphone is a disruptive technology and something that many of us use in our everyday lives. So, it's easy to think about how the smartphone is disruptive. In general, we could think about how any phone or the first telephone was disruptive. Before there was a telephone, the only way to communicate with people was through, started out with carrier, then we had such things as the radio, and the radio became the number one way for information to be shared. And then all of a sudden, here comes the TV, and now we can actually watch something and we can actually interact more with other people based on seeing them, so you get more of an emotion and things like that. And then the household telephone came around. You were able to call your aunt or uncle all the way in Connecticut, or you were able to call somebody, for example, in China. And then we had the cell phone. The cell phone is kind of the disruptive technology that came out right before the smartphone, and I believe that the smartphone kind of disrupted the cell phone industry. So the cell phone, we were able to make calls on the go wherever we were at to anywhere in the world, basically. And that was about it, though. We were able to call and send text messages. Well, the smartphone came out, and the smartphone came out shortly after the internet came out, and they incorporated the internet and the uses of a phone all in one. So now what we were able to do is that we were able to access information on our phones, access things such as Google, directions, things that we take for granted, things that people don't think about. Like, that is such a disruptive technology, because before, if you wanted to know how to get somewhere, you had to, before you left for your trip, you would have to plan your route. You couldn't be driving and type in on your phone where you're trying to go and instantly be routed there like you are able to now. You had to plan that out. So maps used to be huge. I remember growing up, there used to be maps in my mom and dad's car, my grandparents' car, and on every road trip we'd go, before we started the car, the first thing we'd do is they'd pull out the map and they explain to us, this is how we're going to get there. Now it's the opposite. My parents turn to me and say, hey, how do I get here? Because they know I can work a smartphone, and I put in the address and the smartphone takes us where to go. So that's just one example of one of the things that technology has, or that, excuse me, that the smartphone has disrupted. It has kind of rid out maps. Now, another thing that you could say that the smartphone has rid out is older communication things like the payphone. It'd be rare to find a payphone nowadays. You can never find a payphone anywhere. And pagers. Pagers, you would send a message to the pager and it would say, tell people to call you, because people didn't carry smartphones on them. As well as, if you think about growing up, especially I know my generation, especially growing up, you'd go to your friend's house and there'd be a home phone in every single house. Like, there was always a home phone. There was no problem. Now, kids go to homes of their friends and there is no home phones anymore. Nobody has a home phone. Everybody has a cell phone. Even 10-year-olds have cell phones. And that's because now they're so easy to use that even a 10-year-old could use them. A 10-year-old can get a hold of a cell phone, have never used one before, and within a matter of weeks know how to call, text message, and surf the internet. I think this product was designed, honestly, as I don't know how to put this. It was designed, obviously it was designed to make money and become a business, but I think it was designed to fill a need and a void of something that never really existed. People wanted to be able to get directions on the fly. People wanted to be able to search their answers on something small device right there in front of them. I mean, this is not for everybody, but there were, police officers and things like that who had not internet computers in their vehicles back then, but they had tablets where they could keep information and track things. And article I read said that actually the police force is one of the things, and just the government in itself is one of the things that sparked the smartphone being created, because they wanted a way for them to access information from, so if they're looking up a criminal, they wouldn't be able to access that information without having to actually go to the station and things like that. So they wanted it to be easy, and instant. Instant is the one thing that created the smartphone. Everyone wants everything instant, right away, right away. I think if we look at some of the ramifications of the technology for other cultures or society in general, I don't think that there are really many other ramifications. I think that the smartphone is one that benefits all. I know that there's even countries and nations right now that don't have the smartphone, aren't as advanced as we are. So I understand that, but it doesn't hinder them in any way. It can only help them. The only thing that I could see is that by the time the newest technology, because this will fade away, smartphones will become a thing of the past, and it'll be something new like holograms or who knows what it'll be. And those countries might get our older cell phones and our older smartphones and things like that. I don't see any ramifications of that. All it does is make communication easier for countries, for people. It just makes everything easier in general. The future I kind of talked about a little bit, so this is one that I really dug into, and I was trying to do a lot of research to see what was already out there in the works. And you know how technology companies are, they don't just tell you what they're working on, so it's really hard to find what's in the works and what could be the next potential predecessor to the smartphone. And we can speculate. I speculate maybe there's a obviously smaller has always been the key, except for with this new Apple phone that's they somehow got larger. But if we look at historically over time, the technology always gets smaller, more compact, easier to use. So that's definitely going to be one of the routes. And so maybe something like holograms, maybe you can, it's like a Back to the Future type thing. You can, someone can call you and you can get an actual like image of them on your phone that they could talk to you, and maybe it's now you can communicate anywhere. You know how you get into dead zones and we have to have telephone wires running. Maybe there'll be a technology that's purely based off of satellite. And that doesn't happen now because it's not fast enough. It wouldn't work fast enough. That's why we use these telephone poles and telephone wires. Maybe there's going to be a technology that comes out that allows us not to have to use the telephone poles and the telephone wires. Maybe it's all going to be based off of satellite, and it'll be much faster, and there'll be a much more economical, easier, and cheaper way. I can only imagine how much cheaper and easier it'd be if it wasn't for the initial setup cost and the price of the telephone poles and the telephone wires. I'm sure that's plays a big role in our cost of our phone, is that those had to be set up originally. So these are just some of the reasons why I believe the smartphone is a disruptive technology, and obviously I chose it because who doesn't use one? I've never seen anybody my age that doesn't have a smartphone of some sort. So I figured that this one would be able to reach to everybody and talk to everybody, and anyone would understand it. So this is my final project, and this is why I chose the smartphone.